How you doing, Tom?
Doing okay, Rob. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the show. Tom Passarelli, longtime friend, colleague, sometimes business associate. Uh, it's
Partner
all
in
good.
crime.
Partner in crime. So just to kind of bring everybody up to date, Tom. So we're going to talk about the $1 million career, and really the objective is to inform, inspire, entertain, particularly the younger generation on how to plan, build, and supercharge their $1 million career. You've got a wide variety of experiences, all successful. You've been involved in real estate, entrepreneurial, you start up companies. You're a practicing Virginia attorney, a very successful one. So this is going to be an interesting show for you to inspire some people out there, and maybe at least, show people that, if you and I could do it, anybody could do it.
Yeah.
And it's been one hell of a balancing act over these years. So let me start the conversation out. If you want to give our audience just kind of a thumbnail sketch of your background over the last
Sure.
30 years or so.
Yeah. Well, as you said, I'm a practicing attorney. Happen to be in Virginia, but licensed in New York, California, Virginia, Maryland, but I practice in Virginia, mostly civil trial law. I've been doing that for about 37 years. Got into real estate, commercial and residential real estate, probably 25 years ago. So I've built a little bit of a portfolio in that area. And as you said, I've been involved in a number of startups, businesses that we've developed, and some we own and some we've sold. So as you said, a kind of a mixed bag of experience.
Good. So let's start off with real estate. So I know there's a lot of young people out there thinking, real estate, it's a real asset. I can make a lot of money. People have heard about flipping houses.
Yeah.
I mean, real estate runs the gambit all the way from residential real estate, renting out a home, all the way to building, developing, renting out office buildings, commercial real estate.
Yeah.
Whether it be retail, office, high rise, whatever.
Yeah.
Could you just, give us a thumbnail sketch in terms of, how would somebody even think about getting started in real estate? What are some of the factors that one would consider?
Well, first of all, I would say this to younger people. What you've got that is to your advantage when you're young is you've got time. You've got a lot of time. And the important thing is to make good use of that time. So that's I think, something that I think a lot of young people kind of overlook. You've got to make use of the time you have. And in real estate, the way you make use of time is you buy a piece of property, and either somebody else is helping you pay for it, they're called tenants, or you put your business in that property, and your business pays for the property. And typically what you do is, and this is hard for young people to understand, they really, it takes some living and some wisdom to really grasp this, but you wake up one day and 20 years have gone by and you got all kinds of equity in your property, and your property's gone up in value, and you've got cash flow, positive cash flow. So, in the most fundamental sense, real estate is about taking advantage of that time horizon, and just, the price you pay today is going to look cheap 20 years from now. The rents you're getting today, are going to increase over time. So the fundamentals really advantage the real estate owner, whether it's commercial real estate or residential, when you're buying real estate for income generating purposes, income producing purposes. That's the first point I would make. Real estate is a cyclical business. So if I were to say today, well, you don't want to be in office space because, COVID's raging, people aren't going into the office, places are going dark. That's true today. If somebody's watching this 5 years from now, they may say, wow, that's dated advice, man. Real estate, commercial or office real estate's been booming for the last 2 years. So, it's very much cyclical. Most recently, multi-tenant residential's been hot. Believe it or not, storage facilities like, the U-Haul places where you could store your stuff.
Yeah.
Hot for years in Northern Virginia here. People that bought, farms 20 years ago are selling to data centers because we've got a major internet hub down the street here, and everybody wants to be close to that. I think 70% of the traffic
Really?
goes through this. I think it's called May East, and everybody wants to have a data center. So those people that were sitting on that cheap real estate that they bought 20 years ago are cashing out today and making millions and millions of dollars. So, it's, for young people, I would say you want to be balanced in your approach to what you invest in. You certainly want to be in the stock market. I've got a son who's a financial advisor, and he is smart enough, because he's in the business, to know you got to start young. You start, you start, socking it away young. And again, you wake up 20, 30 years later and you got a nice nest egg. So to me, it's a matter of allocation of resources, allocation of assets. I've put maybe more in real estate than I have in the stock market over the years. It's worked out well for me, but that's where you really, the two places you want to be. You want to be in real estate, you want to be in stocks as a young person. You want to be invested in those two areas for sure.
And particularly since interest rates are so artificially low. I mean, interest rates are basically negative now when you consider inflation. So
Yes, right.
it would seem to me like real estate and the stock market are really the only two places that you can really be, I mean,
Yeah.
you certainly can't be in bonds or money markets.
That's right. That's right. And you know, the thing about real estate is, of course, when interest rates are very low, prices tend to kind of compensate. They go up because money is cheap, and the metrics work out to justify a higher price of real estate. The buyer can make a profit paying a higher price with a lower debt service. But yeah, I mean, where else are you going to put your money these days? I mean, it's a lot of dollars chasing, stocks these days, and yeah, in real estate. Where else are you going to put it? Bitcoin.
So what do you think about these guys who are like flipping houses? That's been the rage the last 3-4 years. I mean, just going in, buying a house, fixing it up, selling it, flipping. I mean, it seems to me like a game of musical chairs. But what's your take on that?
Well, here's my take on that. First of all, that's a very, very locally kind of driven phenomenon. What may be good for my market here in Virginia may not be good for somebody in LA County or in New
Yeah.
York. You know, there's a difference between buying and flipping and buying a property that's stabilized, that has tenants, that you're just going to operate. When you buy
Yeah.
a property to flip, you're making a bet, and that bet is you're going to have the wherewithal, the expertise, the financial wherewithal to improve that property and then sell it at a profit. You're going to be putting money into it, and the
Yep.
bet is you're not going to put so much into it that you're going to lose on the back end. So I think some people who haven't done that before it may look easier than it really is. So I would caution people in terms of buying and flipping. The other thing is I hear people go into auctions, for residential properties. They buy a house at auction, it's cheap, and they're going to flip it and all that business. And you could do that, but you have to recognize that there are people that are just doing that and only that all day long. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you better know what you're doing when you go to that auction and you bid on that property, because you could easily overbid for property. I've seen people do that. So, the auction scenario in my mind isn't ideal for that reason. People get excited, heat of the moment, and they overpay for properties. But there's an opportunity. I would say it's very, very locally driven. You have to look at your own market, see what's going on in the market, what the trends are in residential real estate. Property's value stable, is the property, is the area, improving? Is it kind of is it stagnant? Is it kind of getting run down? So you really want to pick your neighborhood very carefully, and when it comes to residential in particular, that kind of thing, flipping.
Yeah. Is it necessary or advantageous that you as the house flipper would have construction experience or be a handyman? Because I would assume that if you had those skills or experience, you would have a competitive advantage, but maybe not.
No, certainly you would. I would say, this as well, Rob. If you're a person who knows how to identify talent, manage people, find the right people for the job, let's face it, that's probably one of the most important skills any business person can have, no matter what their business, because we all depend on other people. to get things done. So
Yeah.
I would rather, if I were making a bet on a guy who was going into the real estate development business, I'd say, give me a guy who knows how to find the right guy, not
Yeah, right.
necessarily a guy who knows how to hammer nails.
Got it.
However, having said that, I've been in businesses where I say, I really need to know how to do all of this myself. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be able to run this business unless I know how to do every job within it myself. So there's some of
Yeah.
that too. But I think it's a balancing act between the two.
Yeah. Yes. So Tom, you mentioned about you've been involved in other businesses. You understand how to start businesses. So is real estate something, whether it's residential or maybe even commercial, is this something that you could do while you have a full-time job doing something else? Or is this something that you really have to dedicate like all your time to?
It's funny if you ask that question. I used to have people in my office as I would be doing paperwork for the office building that I own, and I would, you know, write a couple of checks and prepare some deposit slips, and they'd be sitting there watching me for about 5 minutes, and I'd be done. I'd say, there it is. I just managed my building for a month. It doesn't take much time. It depends on what you're doing. In other words, I've taken, in some cases, it's been necessary for me to spend a lot of time on a project, on a building. But if you've got, as I say, a stabilized property, meaning you've got a tenant or tenants in that property, you're not doing any construction, people are paying their rent. That's really the most important thing. There isn't a lot to do. There really isn't a lot to do. The one I would say real advantage for people, particularly people who don't have experience, younger people with real estate, and I would say maybe to a certain extent more so commercial real estate. The nature of it is, it's one of the few businesses you could go into where your P&L, your profit and loss statement, is pretty much predetermined. If you think about it, if you have a building, you have a certain amount of space in a certain market that has a certain value to the market, it's going to produce a certain amount of rent on a monthly basis. You know what the building is going to cost you. You know what your financing is going to cost you. You know what your taxes are going to be. Real estate taxes are fixed. You're going to have some insurance. You're going to have some maintenance costs. Not much, though. Maybe you have electricity. Maybe the tenants pay. It's not a very complicated balance sheet. And it's not like no one goes into the real estate business or buys a piece of real estate saying, boy, I hope we're going to make, enough money to pay the mortgage every month. You know that before you go in. And so it's a business that has a lot of certainty around it. One of the few areas of uncertainty is, are the tenants going to pay the rent? So long as you don't have to worry about that, to answer your question, not only is it relatively simple and you could do it in your spare time, there's a lot of certainty around it, not a lot of risk around it.
Right. So let's talk about that for a second. So the critical success factor seems like are the tenants. So are there certain types of commercial or residential real estate that have a higher or a lower risk of tenant turnover or foreclosures?
Rent to doctors.
Rent to doctors.
Doctors are great tenants because they make money. They don't like to move. They're very often in places for 10, 20 years. So, if, everybody, the doctors aren't going out of business. It's not like, there's something disruptive about the market where suddenly we're not going to need doctors anymore. So, but in all seriousness, that's one area. So, professionals, profitable companies, I would, my personal prejudice is I don't do a lot of retail. Retail has a certain amount of risk associated with it. Restaurants, come and go, and some are successful, some aren't. So if you have a strip center and you have, the other thing with real estate is if you spread your risk across multiple tenants, it's not that big a deal if one goes bad. So that's the other thing. If you have a commercial real estate in particular, and you have a multi-tenant building, you're spreading that risk.
So doctors' buildings with maybe a dozen doctors in them, close in a hospital district. Home run, right?
You'll probably pay dearly for it, but yes, that would be a good.
That's what I mean. There's a premium on that, though.
There's going to be a premium on that, and there are metrics for that. This not to get too far in the weeds, but there are metrics around how to value a business. And generally speaking, to put it in the simplest of terms, what you're saying to yourself is, if I have, let's say, $100,000, what will I make? What can I make, let's say, in the stock market with that $100,000? Am I going to get 5% a year, 10% a year? What are my options for that $100,000 in terms of making money for me? And then you have to compare that to the real estate you're looking at. And there are formulas for making that comparison. And typically speaking, people are willing to take maybe a 6% return on capital very often, which isn't, doesn't sound like a lot, but by comparison to a lot of other things, it's not bad. And there are other hidden upsides to owning real estate that make it a little bit more attractive, as I said, over the long haul, the appreciation and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, if you have multi-tenant building, with professionals in it, you probably have a pretty stable situation.
How about retail versus commercial? I mean, I've always thought about retail as you get a phone call at 2 a.m. Hey, the toilet's plugged up, the refrigerator went out. Can you come over and fix my antenna on the roof? I mean,
Yeah,
it would seem like commercial real estate is a lot less intensive than owning a couple houses. I don't know.
yeah, it can be. It can be. You can't get away from it. I mean, I have residential tenants, and no matter what, they're going to call you when there's a problem. You can tell them, this is how we work it. You take care of this, and I take care of that. They're still calling you when the toilet's, when the toilet's not working right. So, yes, it's like anything else. If you have a property that's in good shape and you maintain it well, and you have some of this is about scale. If you have one property, that property could take a lot of your time. If you have 10 properties, comparatively speaking, at that point, you might need a handyman, right? And now the handyman's taking care of all those issues.
Yeah.
So some of it has to do with kind of that step function and kind of getting to that level where you can offer to somebody else.
Yeah.
I would say the people that I see that are most successful in real estate make a certain commitment to it. Getting back to your point earlier about,
Yeah.
Can you do this on the side? The answer is yes, you can, but it becomes much more efficient if you commit a certain amount of time and effort and resources to it so that you've got a portfolio.
Because most people aren't capable of working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, as you are.
Right. Or you. Yeah. Us.
Me too. Us. Everybody knows.
Well,
I'm a workaholic.
And
it's my freaking birthday today, and I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I should be out partying, man.
I'll say this. People talk about retiring and what are they going to do when they retire. I don't consider myself like doing something that I don't want to do. In other words, as they say, if you enjoy doing what you're doing, you never work a day in your life, right? So,
right.
I don't really have any desire to retire. So, work has never bothered me. I enjoy what I do.
Yeah, same with me too. Yeah. I love work. I mean, I was just telling somebody this morning, I love holidays because holidays is when I can work a full day and get ahead of everyone else because they're home watching football on the sofa.
Right. That's right.
I love holidays.
A lot of time doing that. Yeah.
Christmas is my favorite day because I just work through it every year. New Year's Eve is another one. I love New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
I'm working New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
I pride myself working until midnight on New Year's Eve in my office.
I've spent a lot of holidays, a lot of Columbus days working in the office and whatever it might be, one of these off holidays, that banks are closed and people are home and,
Perfect.
And so you get a lot of work done because the phone doesn't ring, right? You just
the best days are snow days, right?
Oh,
snow day. Perfect. A snow day is great because people will take the snow day off on Monday or whatever, and they'll just lay down and do nothing the rest of the week because it's a snow week now.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's like being in school, it's like a day off. Yeah.
So how does inflation affect real estate values and what you do in real estate? Inflation.
Well, obviously when prices are going up, you're better off buying early rather than later, and I would say this. Here's my answer to that question, Rob. I have seen properties. I've been in certain markets. I'll give you an example. My wife and I had a beach house in Delaware, and we were looking for a beach house in Delaware 20 years ago. We came across a property that was a nice little property, but it was about $600,000. I think it was about $600,000 at the time. And my wife was like, "No, we can't afford that. We're not going near that." Fast forward 20 years later, the property is like $1.9 million. Okay. Just recently sold for because we know the neighborhood. So, it was recently listed for like 1.9 million bucks. That's inflation, right? That's appreciation, let's say.
Right.
And that's the advantage when you're starting young and you've got that time. That's what happens. So it's not going to get any cheaper. They're not making any more of it. It's not going to get any cheaper in most markets.
And the other thing too about real estate is that you have the use of leverage, right? I mean, if you buy $1 million commercial office building, you put a 10% down on a mortgage, $100,000. Well, if the real estate doubles in value to 2 million, you don't make 100% of your money. You make 10 times your money, right?
Right. 10 times your cash. That's right. That's an important point. Right? So I think a lot of people very often are too conservative when it comes to leverage. They think it's more responsible to put more cash in, to take less debt. Debt has to be managed. And there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. But you're absolutely right. Leverage makes a big difference. And when I say, are you going to make 6% on your money? I'm talking about 6% on the investment. If you look at what your return on cash is, because you only put in a certain amount of cash, that return is much, much higher. So you have to factor that in as well. That $100,000 that you put into that $1 million real estate could be generating for you $200,000 a year in net income. That's a tremendous return on cash, lower return on investment, but still a good return on investment potentially. So and that's not even considering appreciation. That's just, your cash flow on an annual basis.
And plus you get a lot of tax write-offs with real estate investment too, right?
Well, you have depreciation on the improvements on the real estate. And that helps every year. Obviously you're writing off the interest. So I mean, all of your expenses obviously are tax deductible in a business like that.
I think I read an article recently. They were profiling like the richest 500 people in the world or something. I think it was like over 80% of them made their money primarily through real estate.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. It's something once you get into a rhythm and you've done it a couple of times, and that's also something I would say to someone who's starting off. Do it once and you'll be an expert at it. Yeah. It doesn't take, it's not a kind of a steep learning curve.
So when you say do it once, are you advocating somebody start with like residential first, like just buy a neighborhood house or maybe start commercially?
Either way, the principles are the same. Residential, the difference is you're dealing with people who are homeowners and you're sort of in that milieu, that environment where, you're dealing with somebody's house and you have to remember that, somebody's living in that house and that's their home. And so there's a certain mindset around that market versus the commercial world where you're dealing with, it's a B2B thing is the way I would put it.
Have you had any funny examples? I say funny, but like unusual examples and chasing people down for rent or somebody leaving in the middle of the night or like just problems where you're like, I'm going to kill this.
You're going to make me tell this story. You don't know the story, but I'm going to tell you the story anyway.
Tell me the story.
When I bought the building that I'm in now, 20 years ago, we decided we wanted to occupy the top floor. There were a bunch of small tenants in the space, and they were all on a month-to-month tenancy. So it wasn't a matter of waiting for leases to run out. We were able to just give them notice, and then they'd have to leave, and we would re-tenant the top floor, and I was going to use my space. Well, we had a couple of people who really didn't want to go. And we waited and waited and waited. And finally, I got a hold of this guy who was an ex-Marine, and he had all these Marines working for him, right? All these movers. So it was a moving company, okay? So I said to these guys, and I would not recommend, that people do this, but at the time, this is sort of what my mindset was. I said, what we're going to do is we're going to go there on a Saturday, and we're going to move all these guys out. And we're going to tell them, get their stuff on the street. They've been moved out. And we did that. And I have, I have a girl who was working for me at the time, a friend of mine now who was working for me at the time, who always reminds me of that story. That's why I can't forget it. I can't forget about it. But we came in, over the weekend and moved some tenants out. Sort of aggressive, but that's.
So you actually moved their stuff from their office out into the parking lot?
The street, yeah.
Really? No, I mean like a desk and files.
It's hard. It's hard to. You don't want to do that in the residential world. You're getting a lot of trouble if you do it in the residential world. You don't even want to do it in the commercial world. I was a little bit younger. I was a little bit more brash, and so
you had nothing to lose back then.
I wouldn't recommend doing it, but you could sort of get away with it in the commercial world a little bit.
So what happened? I mean, did you call the Marines and, hey, your furniture's outside? Or what was the reaction?
We it was like a military operation. We had these guys come in, I think, something like midnight or some 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday morning. We knew no one was going to be in the building. And I think what they did actually, as I recall now, is I think they brought moving vans and they just put all their stuff in storage. I can't remember now exactly what we did with the stuff. My only concern was that they were out of my building. They were holding.
Really?
It. Yeah.
And now, I think another advantage you have, Tom, is you're a lawyer. You're a practicing lawyer in the state of Virginia, obviously.
Right.
And you do cases and all sorts of stuff. So I would imagine that having a legal background has helped you as well, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, people talk to me about, should they go to law school? Young people in particular, should they go to law school? My answer is having a background in the law is invaluable, particularly if you're going to do anything in business. It's invaluable. So you don't have to become a lawyer if you go to law school. So when people say, should I go to law school? The answer is yeah. It's a great education. It's gonna serve you well throughout your life. Obviously, if you practice, you stay on top of things, and you might be a little bit more proficient. You should be a lot more proficient at the law and understanding the law than if you don't practice. But the education in and of itself is valuable. But yes, it's been a huge advantage to me over the years.
Interesting. So you've also started several companies. Interesting, across several industries. Talk about being, not only a real estate entrepreneur, but entrepreneurship in general. Like, I guess the question I would have for you is, what kind of skills and attributes, attributes being natural things like drive and determination and teamwork and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Skills and attributes that an entrepreneur would need to have a fighting chance. Building a successful business.
Off the top of my head, Rob, I would say one of the most important things is what people like to call EQ, emotional intelligence. Business is about getting along with people. We touched on this earlier. I would rather have someone on my team who understands people and knows how to motivate people than someone who happens to be a subject matter expert. I mean, you want those subject matter experts as well, but absolutely someone who understands people, gets along well with people, can motivate people. That's a critical component. I think also, if you're getting into business because you need to make money, you're in a hurry to make money, I mean, that's okay. But my experience is, if you get into something and you just you're into it, you're kind of having fun with it, you're challenged by what you're doing, you see it as an exploration, the money comes. The money will come. Just enjoy what you're doing, be committed to what you're doing, really getting engrossed in it. and put everything into it, and then the money will come.
So passion is important. You
Passion.
got to have the passion for it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, just
Yeah,
as we were
because-
talking about earlier about, how, we've been workaholics throughout our lives. I mean, some people call it flow. You get in the zone, you just kind of, you're rocking and rolling, you're moving, you're firing on all 8 cylinders, you're getting things done. That's fun. That's enjoyable for a lot of people. And if you're that kind of person, if challenges energize you and motivate you and inspire you, you've got the stuff to be an entrepreneur, I think.
So what advice would you give young people now? I mean,
I would
either in
say
real
that-
estate or just in general. 22-year-old guy graduates from college. What do I do now?
I would say today there are more opportunities than there ever have been. Some people say, it's not as easy today as it was back when I was young. It was real easy. Things were simpler, et cetera, et cetera. I would say we are living today at a time of tremendous opportunity. Obviously, technology is what we do in this country. So our kind of perspective as Americans is technology and tech startups and that sort of thing. I would say anybody who's got technical skill should nurture that skill, should pursue a career in technology, because again, that's what we do well here. There are lots of opportunities in technology. And also, if you have an interest in real estate, there's always a way to dovetail technology, for example, with real estate. Or if you have an interest in finance, if you have an interest in investment, dovetailing investing with real estate, kind of taking that slice of the industry. So, I mean, million different things. I would say you just have to get out there and do it. You just can't be afraid. What I see in young people today is a sort of reticence to take risk. The young people living in their parents' basement kind of thing. I don't want to stereotype everybody, but the future belongs to the brave, the people that are going to be taking risks. If I as a parent, what I would say to parents is, get your kids out of the house and get them out there taking risks, and let them fall, let them stumble. We coddle our kids too much.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of technology and real estate, what's up with you, Tom? What's on the new horizon? What are some new things you're involved in?
Well, let's see. Right now, I am developing a division for my wife's business, which is a personnel medical recruitment business.
Yeah.
She does physician recruitment, and she's getting ready to go into what's called the locum tenens business, which is temporary placement of physicians in hospitals and practice groups. So what she's been doing for many, many years in her business is placing doctors permanently in positions in hospitals and practice groups. What this new division will do is put a doctor in a hospital for 2 weeks or a month or 20 hours a week to fill in for somebody else. So it's sort of the same industry, but a little bit different twist on it. So I'm spending some time standing that new business up. That's what I'm doing mostly these days.
Yeah, it sounds like, I know the hospitals are having a hard time staffing, finding good people.
It's funny. Yes, and it's a weird thing. We bring in so many foreign trained doctors in this country. If you graduate from medical school in Pakistan, you're going to be able to come to this country, take a certain number of tests, and practice medicine in America. But if you're a young American guy trying to get into medical school, the competition, because we're short, we don't have enough medical schools. So
is that what it is?
Yes. So, and some of this is the AMA, because they want to protect their turf, or they don't want to flood the zone with docs. But bottom line is, we're starved for medical professionals. We don't have enough medical schools, and we're importing doctors from overseas. And so the young American who's interested in going to medical school can't get into medical school. because the competition's too stiff. You know, you have to have a 4.7, whatever it is, a 5.0, whatever it is these days to get into
Yeah.
medical school.
It's the same thing with dental school. Same thing.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate your time, Tom. It's been very interesting. You've got a great career. You're having fun. You're still in the fight. I'm sure you'll be doing this many years from now, as I will be.
Hopefully.
Retirement isn't even on the horizon. Retirement? What, retire from what? I'm having so much fun doing this now.
Yep. Yep.
So
Thanks, Rob.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I really appreciate
enjoyed
it.
talking to you.
I wish you luck in the future, and thanks for being on the $1 Million Career, Tom.